And you're
actually the show actually started about a year ago, and it has grown from a podcast into a radio station and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, we started just trying to find a place to highlight veterans is where it started at, and then we got into kind of being a network group. So we kind of take agencies and find veterans that need that kind of agency, and we just kind of link them up. We stick with the smaller agencies that don't really have the money for advertising. I mean, everybody knows about the VA and Tunnels for Towers and these
yeah.
guys that spend billions of dollars. But the really small organizations like She's the Veteran and Leaving the Sidelines and Operation Encore and all these little organizations that just don't have that kind of budget. So that's
And
that's
they
where we
probably
started.
do a lot more for veterans. They
They
probably
do.
do. They impact their community and help probably more than what you see in the bigger organizations.
Oh, absolutely. They don't
Not
have the
not
overhead.
discrediting the bigger organizations, but I'm just saying, like, those little community forces are power.
No, absolutely. I mean, these guys don't out here. They do not necessarily care about anything but the money. So when you see a 30-second commercial every hour, I mean, that's money that's not helping the veterans. That's money that's going to raising more money. So the smaller
Right.
agencies don't have that overhead. They don't have the $1 million office buildings and the jets and all that stuff to have to deal with. So,
But they figure out helping each other.
yep, yep. I
They
mean,
figure it out.
there's been a lot of outside agencies that's helped me with this radio station. So yeah, and it's just a big network. It really is.
Well, I've got to witness in my work the links that caregivers and people will go to not only help patients in general, but veterans. There's so many like dispensaries that give discounts for veterans. There's so many caregivers that treat veterans for free and provide free medicine and cannabis oil for veterans.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll go ahead and get started. Hey, welcome everybody to Two Drunk Dudes in a Gun Room. Today I have got Stacey Shepherd with me. We will be talking about therapy and cannabis. How you doing, Stacey?
I'm good. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself and how this organization started.
So, Cannabis campaign started in 2012 after I attended Oaksterdam University. We had passed medical marijuana in Arizona in 2010 and got our program running in 2011. So I went to Oaksterdam University, which is a cannabis university out of California. I went to there thinking that I was going to learn how to grow my personal 12 plants and cook with cannabis. And once I was there, just like the first half of class is all the history of cannabis and the politics and everything leading up to, then 2011. And they had encouraged us on our lunch break to go check out the Oaksterdam Museum. It wasn't open to the public yet. They were still adding a lot of stuff, but they had a lot of good stuff in there. So they had opened it up for the first time for us students while we were there for the 3 days.
Okay.
So I go in the Oaksterdam Museum, and I'm from Kentucky, so all the hemp stuff was just like exciting to me, and I was taking pictures of all the hemp stuff. And a friend said, "Stacy, is this your uncle?" And I turned around and looked down this walkway, and at the end of it was a big picture of my Uncle Gary. Um, and when I walked down that aisleway to that memorial, I had my own PTSD experience myself. As I walked in there, I walked like as I was walking. It was like I was walking 18 years into the past in the living room that I was in when it
Wow.
came on the news that the Kentucky State Police and a National Drug Task Force killed my uncle, a Purple Heart Vietnam veteran, over 12 marijuana plants.
That is
So
insane.
they came to his property that day. Told him that they had saw his plants in a helicopter, and that they were going to have to come in and cut his plants down. He said, "Over my dead body, I don't believe the way you do." And in his view, it was his religious right between him and God to use plant medicine versus alcohol and pills to
Absolutely.
give him the quality of life that he, you know, he was drafted to go fight for freedom. And so that's what he felt his constitution on his own land should protect him against them coming in and cutting his plants down. So they left. At that time, it was just a helicopter. They left. About an hour later, his property was surrounded by over 20 some officers. There was a National Drug Task Force hiding in the tobacco field next door, and three Black Hawk helicopters for 7 hours held my family hostage. They wouldn't let my aunt and my baby cousin leave. And it ended in that 7 hours with my Uncle Gary having percussion grenades thrown in his face and filled with bullets in front of my baby cousin that was 4 at the time. So I left when I had my daughter. I left Kentucky because they did, they pretty much harassed my family and laughed the whole situation out of court and all that. So I left Kentucky and I went to Arizona. So fast forward to 2011, 18 years later, I'm looking at this memorial that I didn't even know existed. And then after I processed all that and came back to reality and was able to actually read the memorial, I look and his memorial is huge and it's surrounded by all these other stories. So 18 years after my uncle's murder over cannabis, I'm learning that it wasn't just Kentucky and it wasn't just some backwoods thing that happened, that they had been killing people over cannabis years before and years after my uncle. And at the same time, I'm learning all the studies, the research, where to find all the information regarding cannabis, the endocannabinoid system, everything. Like the research is out there. The research many, many years before my uncle's murder was out there. Um, so yeah, I went to Oaksterdam University wanting to learn how to grow my 12 plants and cook with cannabis for my own personal life. And I left there like a changed human. I felt like my uncle came back, you know, like all the, I call it Godspeed timing, and everything that led up to me being at Oaksterdam, that very first time that they opened the museum where my uncle's big face is there, and learning everything that I learned. It just ignited. I went back to Arizona and I felt like I had to educate with everything I learned. I just felt like everyone should get on their medical marijuana card. Everyone should be using cannabis. And then that led to me doing patient consults, helping people get off pills with cannabis, doing a lot of work with veterans, meeting Dr. Sue Sisley. At the time, she was fighting NIDA and fighting the FDA to be allowed to research smoked cannabis and PTSD related to veterans, and was working with her as she worked her way through and got successful to where now she is doing research, clinical trials on smoked cannabis in regards to PTSD.
Wow. So backing up just a little bit. So all of this originated from 12 plants. I mean, I don't know a lot about marijuana, but we're not talking 12 plants is not like cartel money. I mean, so he lost his life over 12 plants. That's that, and they put all this money into going after people with that small of amount of product but we're
Millions
not
of
doing
dollars.
anything about what's that?
Yeah, millions of dollars. That's what I always said. Like millions of dollars was spent that day to execute my uncle over 12
Yeah.
marijuana plants in one of the poorest states in the country.
And you look at what we do now about fentanyl, nothing. And
Well,
that's not helping anything.
and that's what I've seen, like in Kentucky, when I go back home to help Kentucky, they just finally passed a medical marijuana bill last month,
Hmm.
and we'll see how that goes. It's not going to be really activated for like 2 years, but I see it with my own eyes. The drug war and fentanyl and
Yeah.
opiates and methamphetamines.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the last 10 years, I've been helping get people off, the things that they're addicted
Yeah.
through with, and such better success rates using cannabis and psilocybin
Hmm.
for means of recovery, like helping with recovery. The the results are ridiculous. And we waste our, like we still are like working on getting the access out there and the knowledge and education out there so people know they have options, different ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So Missouri, I'm in Missouri, and Missouri had it. They've had it, I think, for a couple years now for medically, and this year they allowed it. They now allow it for recreationally too. And I think personally, I've never used it, but being a truck driver, I watched what happened with the decisions that our government made by not just legalizing it like Canada did and just everywhere. I literally watched people flocking to the states that it was legal for regardless of what reason they wanted, whether it was for therapy or for life choices or anything. But they created environments for these people that were not healthy. No, not enough housing, not enough jobs, and they destroyed economies by not just legalizing it everywhere. So I mean, just in that aspect alone, the government did damage with that aspect. I seen it personally with not even being a part of it. So when you talk to the VAs, and what do they have they got any research that are they looking at doing something like that? I know I've heard in the past about psychedelics and stuff that they've experimented with that type of stuff for extreme cases, but do they do anything currently with cannabis?
So the VA has to, follow what's federally legal and allowed. So right now, a lot of research is happening to be ready for federal legalization. But
Okay.
back in 2014, um, it was decided that the VA would acknowledge legal medical marijuana rights for veterans. Because in the beginning, if you tested positive for marijuana, they could take away your VA benefits and
Oh wow.
your care through the VA if you tested positive for marijuana. That changed, and that's really important for veterans to know because that's been since 2014, and I'm still educating on it on a regular basis just by listening to people like, oh, I wish I could, use medical. I wish I could try marijuana, but they'll take my VA rights. They'll take my
Yeah.
VA benefits away. And that's very untrue. The VA is not allowed to um, get in the way of rights that are legal in each state.
Okay.
So they
Well, I
won't they
know.
won't take away your benefits.
So I guess that's where the same thing comes with for like concealed carry and gun permits and stuff like that too. Is it's going to have to wait for a federally side before, because if you have a medical marijuana card, you're not able to purchase a firearm. That's true too, right?
Right, and like it's right to a degree, right? So you have your Second Amendment right, no matter what.
Right.
And so if you're in a medical marijuana state and you have a gun, you're not breaking the law.
Right.
So out here in Arizona, like private to party sales, nobody's going to get in the way of that.
Right.
What
Right.
is illegal because of federal law is when you go to a gun store and you have to sign that
Right.
piece of paper that says you are not using any like any controlled substance. And cannabis is still a number one controlled substance in the eyes of the federal government. So if you sign, if you go buy a gun and you sign that piece of paper that says you're not, using any controlled
Right.
substances, you're purging yourself.
Right.
So, like Arizona had to fight, the federal government really wanted the medical marijuana patients list way back when in Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a theory of why they wanted it so they could compare, so they could set people up to fail. And Arizona said, no, you can't you can't use our list to compare with any of your lists. You can't,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
not, that's HIPAA violations, and we can't share that information with you. So
Right.
they're just scaring. I mean, that's what I say. They're scaring you by saying, oh, you can't have a gun and medical marijuana at the same time. No, you can't sign that paper.
Right.
You can't sign that paper.
Right.
And you
Now,
can't travel with your medical marijuana and a firearm across state lines.
okay. And to me, I think it should be the same as alcohol too. I think you should be able to, just because you have a marijuana card, you should still be able to purchase a firearm from a store. And I don't see any issues with that. There is no difference than me that drinks, I don't know how many bottles of liquor, but and then I can walk in and buy a firearm as long as I'm not under the influence. It should be the same for somebody with marijuana as well. Um, Now let me ask you this, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist guy, but I know a lot of people out there. Do you think one of the reasons why the federal government doesn't just rush out and legalize everything is more because of big pharmacy not wanting it to, not wanting people to come off of all these other drugs that are being pushed, especially for PTSD and veterans right now?
Most definitely.
Yeah,
Most
I think so
definitely.
too.
And big alcohol.
Yeah. Well, I didn't
Because
even think
that's,
about alcohol. Yeah.
oh,
Yeah, you're right.
yeah. I mean, I'm a big, and I think that's why I've been powerful in what I do, is because the police murdered my uncle, but I don't, I do not hate police, and
Right.
I advocate and educate for safe access for police officers also,
Right.
because the only legal, they witness trauma on a regular basis, and
Absolutely.
their chemicals are like in high alert, fight or flight for all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when they have, you know, nobody wants to talk about our police officers struggling and commit suicide. You don't hear people, you hear people advocating 22 veterans a day commit suicide. We need to
Yeah.
help them. But nobody wants to talk about our police officers committing suicide and struggling mentally, because then people would be afraid of, you know, the health of our officers out on the street.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
then at the same time, we only give them alcohol as an option to self-medicate. I mean,
Yeah.
to be honest, that's what, so many people, like, that's the majority of people, they self-medicate in some way or another.
Oh, absolutely.
Um, and the only way to self-medicate legally for police officers is alcohol.
Yeah.
And so police officers that have, I feel that addressing some of the violence issues that we experience with police officers would be helpful, would be alleviated with giving them a safer option like cannabis. Because if you're alcoholic and you're out on the
Yeah.
job and you start going through DTs or withdrawals and your sugars start getting all messed up, well, some of the nicest diabetics act like monsters when their
Yeah.
sugars are off. It's the
Yeah.
same as alcoholics. So we're really not giving our police officers, um, like, sensible help
Right.
and offer, we really don't want to talk about what their lifestyles and what their jobs are doing to them mentally and emotionally. Nobody wants to talk about it. And therefore, the only thing that they can do is drink alcohol. And that's very dangerous for them and everyone.
Absolutely. I'll be the first to admit, um, alcohol is not it's not a positive method, and I don't care anybody out there that tells you otherwise. I used to drink a lot, and now I might have maybe 2 drinks a night, and sometimes I don't even drink at all. So, tonight it's sweet tea. Last night I had, I think, 1 drink or 2 drinks, you know, but I drink now because I want to, not because I have to. And I
Yeah, it's more
think,
of a moderation and a
you know,
pleasure
and,
thing.
and,
Yeah.
I'm not a pro VA cocktail kind of person, but the meds that the VA's got me on now is the reason why my drinking has cut down. I know it is. I still don't sleep very much, and I still have other issues. But as far as functioning now as a normal person, at least I'm doing that much. But it's not a secret. These drugs that we're given is not a long term solution. So
No, the
either,
effects on the body is awful,
yeah,
especially long term.
you know, I got one that I take, and I couldn't figure out what the hell was wrong with me for the longest time. I would know what I wanted to say, but I couldn't make my mouth say it. And I found out later it was one of the side effects that there's sometimes you just get stuck in like a loop and you start stuttering, and you can't spit the words out. And I'm like, man, I sound like I'm an idiot, you know. But you don't have these kind of side effects from, I got family members that smoke marijuana, not necessarily for PTSD recreationally, but they're much different people, than some of my friends that drink a lot. you know the results that you get from the two are completely different. So yeah, I would not argue that there's no chance for alcohol to ever be a solution, even though a lot of people do take that route. And I didn't think about the police officers, that being the only legal route that they could self-medicate. And I think, I've never been a police officer, but I can probably assume that in their line of work, it's similar to the military. If you admit there's something wrong, then you're kind of shamed, and your career is messed with and everything else. So that could be another reason why they go with self-medicating with the only thing that they can go with is as alcohol. So it does make sense what you're saying.
Yeah, we taught. Of course, I drive a big old cannabis around the country, so I get pulled over a lot. And I've probably been pulled over more than most people in their whole life. Um, but I just use it as an opportunity to talk to the police officers, and they end up wishing me well and good luck and thanking me because I'm out there saying things like, like you said, that they can't say, you know, they don't have the freedom to say because, they're in law enforcement.
Right. Well, and the other difference too is you're arguing for a controlled method to where the person that is getting a actual product that is not laced, and people buying stuff off the street, they don't really know what's in it. So if it was prescribed by a doctor, a psychologist, or they could go to a dispensary and know what they're getting, I mean, I think that makes a huge difference right there by itself. So I think that's another component of it, as far as you know, taking all the other stuff out there that people mix with marijuana and everything else. If you take all that stuff away, the results, like you said, would probably show how much more help it is out there with just that method. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, and it does. It does, and it has. I mean, there's so many veterans out there that are on ridiculous numbers, like 20 some pills a day,
Yeah, yeah,
and they're daily dealing with not only what's got them the prescriptions, the illnesses or the symptoms that got them the prescriptions, but they're dealing with all the side effects. And I'm like,
yeah.
geez, if you go through all the time, effort, and energy and commitment of taking 30 pills a day, then you should be able to read minds, fly, have some kind of superhero powers. Like that is what would make it worth it to me. And
Yeah,
then
absolutely.
like what all this time, like it's just like, oh my gosh, you'd spend all this time to feel shitty, like in different
Yep.
ways, or not be able to eat. And then
Yep.
you spend time with these guys and with, like drops and gummies, they're getting
Hmm.
off pills within weeks, and within days they are within minutes a lot of times they are feeling better than they have, they're realizing benefits that they haven't had in years.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh yeah, like you said, yes, I think big pharma's involved because I've seen it with my own eyes. I've seen how
Yeah.
easy, and I will say it's easy, it is easy with cannabis to get people 16 pills a day, 30 pills a day, down to 3 to none. And their quality of
Wow.
life is is so much more enhanced and better than before they were prescribed the 30 pills a day, and while they were prescribed the 30 days, or 30 pills a day, it's unbelievable the changes that you can see in people's lives in just 30 days with cannabis.
Yeah. Is there any studies out there that explains kind of why cannabis works, or does it? Is there like a
Yeah,
certain?
I'll, well, cannabis and anything that you want to research as far as like I just want to throw it out there. You can go to pubmed.com and you can literally put in the search bar anything in general. But
Hmm.
as far as cannabis, you can be cannabis and PTSD, cannabis and breast cancer, cannabis and addiction. You can put it in the search bar and it will bring up all the data and all the different research, and it's not biased. It's not a biased website at all. So you can, I like pubmed.com because if you want to nerd out on that kind of stuff, you can really make informed decisions for yourself. You
Yeah.
can decide for um, yourself. Now, for one, cannabis. So I don't know if you're familiar. Are you familiar with the endocannabinoid system?
I am not.
So that's what was discovered. So back in the like 70s and 80s when, cannabis cases were being tried, and the feds were wanting to prove all the harm done with cannabis. A lot of that research got silenced because every time they had NIDA, it wasn't NIDA at the time, but every time they hired doctors and researchers to prove how bad cannabis was for you, they always discovered something more another benefit of cannabis.
Yeah.
So so then there was a scientist, Dr. He just passed away a couple of months ago, Dr. Robert McCallum, that was part of the research team on asking the question, why does cannabis, like you said, why does cannabis help with this stuff? And that's where it was discovered, the endocannabinoid system.
Okay.
And the endocannabinoid system is a functioning system in your body, just like your adrenaline, lymphatic, circulatory system. It's another system in your body, and it's a regulatory system. So you have all these receptors in your body. You have CB1 and CB2 receptors in the body. And when this system is activated, it is a regulatory system. So when those communications are made, cannabis doesn't heal the body or it doesn't cure disease. What it does is it communicates with the body. Like it communicates with a cancer cell and it inhibits its death and its reprogression. It like,
Okay.
oh, it communicates with the body to start telling it what it needs to do to regulate itself. That's what
Okay.
the
Wow.
system is working to do. So that is the answer on, like people like cannabis can't cure everything. It can't help everything, Well, no, not necessarily. It doesn't necessarily cure anything.
Right.
It helps. Our bodies are designed without all the chemical warfare. I call it chemical warfare with
It is.
the quality of our foods and big pharma and all that.
Yep.
Our bodies are naturally designed to be here in a homeostasis atmosphere and function, meaning that our bodies are self healers. When we are operating at our prime, then it doesn't even matter if a pandemic happens, if there's a coronavirus in the air. Our bodies aren't worried about it. When our bodies are functioning the way that
Right.
we are actually designed, biologically designed to work. But our air density is thicker now. Our foods travel thousands of miles to us, and
Yeah.
you know, is very far from any kind of living energy by the time it gets to our table. And yes, you know, uh, the statistics of our children being on pharmaceuticals now has increased just over the 10
Oh,
years. It's like
absolutely.
doubled. Um, so yeah, so now so, you can either be a part of the system and, do all the medical things. It's it's been since the 70s that doctors are not allowed to prescribe any other treatments for cancer besides chemo, radiation, and surgery.
Yeah.
But I am talking to you on a little phone that works as a computer,
Yeah.
and doctors are still not allowed to prescribe any other treatment. I mean, there's all kinds of other treatments that have shown effective for cancer. But still today, the only thing that we can just tweak radiation and cancer and chemotherapy.
Yep.
And talk about cruel and unusual punishment. I don't know how you feel about that, but the way that we address cancer in this nation, when I've seen it with my own two eyes, the different options,
Yeah.
the kinder, more loving options for people to heal from even things as major as cancer,
Yeah.
compared to the things that you go through with chemo and radiation. Yeah, it's disgusting.
Yeah. I've seen articles, and in one of those articles, it was talked to about it by a doctor. You know, there there is kind of a hidden agenda. Insurance companies will literally like ban your practice if you do not follow what they want. Just like you said, if you don't treat a certain way, if you don't do this certain test versus this other test, then yeah, you just kind of get kicked out of the book club, and you're no longer allowed to read. And that's
Right?
unfortunately, it means it's become our healthcare has became more about the dollar than it has about healing people. So
When
yeah,
my daughter, I mean, it will go a little off topic, but when my daughter was pregnant, her OBGYN had a conversation with us, kind of on that lines. She was explaining to us on how she knew for a fact that women in this country have all kinds of unnecessary surgeries. And she explained, like, back in the day when you were resident at a hospital and your residency was threatened, you know, well, you just went down the road to another hospital, or there was a whole, there was other hospitals and stuff in your area
hmm
to go to move to. Well, she explained, like, at the hospital that she was a resident at, they're part of Banner Health Network. So when her residency is threatened, then her opportunity to be in half the medical facilities in the Phoenix metro area is eliminated.
yep,
And beyond, now it's beyond. But what she was explaining is that they go to you, they expect, like, they don't come out and call them quotas, but they
right,
expect every OBGYN to do so many births, so
yep,
many surgeries a month. Kind of like
yeah,
car salesmen are expected to sell so many cars a month. Literally, our doctors are put in those same uh, protocols or whatever.
Yeah.
Like you have to do so many surgeries or they start threatening your residency. So that's where a lot of unnecessary biopsies, hysterectomies, C-sections, and
Yeah.
different things. Not that there's not, not that they're not needed and it doesn't need to be, it doesn't need to happen from time to time, but that's what it came right out of her mouth, the whole system and what
Yeah.
happens and why, because of how things have grown into networks instead of individual hospitals.
Yeah. Yeah. You're absolutely right. So I know you kind of brought it up earlier. I was going to bring it up towards the latter part, anyways, because when I went to your Facebook page, your bus is pretty cool. So tell everybody a little bit. How did the bus come about?
So, like I said earlier, when I left Oaksterdam University, I was a totally changed person. I felt like my Uncle Gary had contacted me 18 years after leaving, and I felt that to go educate everybody I could about the truth about this plant and try to help people. And that's what I was doing. And um, very successful at it. I was helping, I had medical marijuana clinics calling me and asking me if they should put me on the payroll or how they could help me because I had patients being referred to them every day. Like, because I was out there.
Yeah.
Um, I went to every public meeting that I could go um, to let them know about Prop 203, the qualifying conditions, and all the good stuff it was doing for patients and where the closest clinic was. Because at public meetings, like city council meetings, even police officer meetings, like literally any public meeting that I could fit in my schedule,
Hmm.
because at public meetings you have 2 to 5 minutes. There's always like a public forum
Yeah.
that you can talk 2 to 5 minutes depending on the meeting.
Right.
So I would go to these meetings and like one meeting that I went to that I knew a medical marijuana clinic had just opened up down the road. It was about whether they should get bike and horse lanes in their community or not. But I didn't care what the topic was. I would go there and take advantage of my 2 to 5 minutes, whatever it was, to let people know that we have medical marijuana, what it's doing for patients, how to contact me for questions. I wasn't getting paid for all this. I was just driven by
Yeah.
heart and passion and the need to do everything I could to get the truth out there. And it was like
Absolutely.
the more patients that I helped, and I got to see it with my own 2 eyes of like what drops or gummies could like introducing that into people's worlds, like could just change their lives, like in days and weeks. Like it was just, so I would just, the more I did, the more I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I manifested the cannabis. I said I needed a bus. 6 months later, like I said, I needed a bus and I was going to make it the cannabis and it was going to be a rally on wheels and help educate the masses and help get patients to things that they can't get to and help travel advocates to court supports. And I just had this master plan and it was a 2-year plan. And 6 months later, these two guys in North Carolina introduced this cannabis that they had built. And they toured it for 2 months before. And of course, I contacted them like, oh my God, you built my bus. And we're going to have one on the west, because I'm in Arizona, so like I'm going to have one on the west side and then we're going to have more buses and da 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 da. And, together we thought that we were going to end cannabis prohibition and free the weed within 2 to 5 years. Like, no
Yeah.
problem. Well, then
Right.
yeah, within 2 months they had to um, put the cannabis on eBay. And so friends of mine and myself, they helped me get the cannabis, and I went to go get her in October 2012. Before I could go get her, I had to go to a NORML conference. NORML is the national organization for the reform of marijuana laws. And they had a conference that I was already registered at in LA. So I went there and saw a bunch of people I knew and a lot of people that followed me, telling everybody that I had the cannabis. I was going to go get the cannabis. And so I had a tour in those 3 days. I had all these organizations, you know, oh, can you come through here? Can you come through here? Can you come? And so I had a national tour set up, a 14-day tour across the map when I went to go pick her up in North Carolina. And I got to see, oh, wow, like the cannabis is even more power than I
Oh
even
yeah.
thought. Like, so that activated the country all over, like all over the country. It was activating and empowering activism all over the country for the cannabis plant. Because
Yeah.
the bus is a rally on wheels, literally. Like, I go to rest, like, not only am I going from point A to point B, I'm not only educating and talking to a lot of people at those places, but all the miles in between. Like the windows educate why it's driving down the
Yeah.
road, and the artwork and all the artwork, and then rest stops, gas stations, restaurants, Walmart. Like, I'm educating nonstop. I'm talking to people nonstop and answering their questions and sharing information and letting them take pictures with the bus. Um, so it is literally, a rally on wheels.
Yeah.
Sometimes I've been at gas stations for 15 minutes before, and I've been at gas stations for 3 hours. It's like,
I
in
could
some of
see
these
that.
small towns, yeah, they just do a Snapchat or like a text, like, oh my gosh, look what's at the Speedway. And people get out of their house. Like, you would think I was a concert or something. Like, oh my gosh, everybody's going to the Speedway from like 5 towns around to see the cannabis.
That's awesome though. I mean, that's an awesome way to get the word out. I mean, just like you said, driving down the road. When I seen your Facebook page, I think I looked at your bus like 6 times. I ain't gonna lie. I just kept going back to it, trying to zoom in on the artwork and everything else. But yeah, so that is really
Yeah,
cool.
everyone loves the cannabis, and we're actually going to be at an event in Missouri on July
Really?
8th. Yeah,
What part of Missouri?
I will find that out. I've
Yeah,
been
yeah.
trying to remember the name of the event, and I apologize that I didn't realize you were in Missouri. I would have been prepared.
That's okay. Yeah,
I should
just
have
shoot me
done
a text or
more
whatever.
homework. Yeah, I will. But yeah, it's in Missouri. July 8th. A big cannabis event is happening that weekend.
Okay.
Like, it's the whole
Yeah.
weekend. Yeah.
If it's not too far from here, I'll stop in and say hi and maybe give you some more um, publicity. Get some more
Oh,
people
that
out
would
there
be
for you.
wonderful. Yeah, I'll definitely send you the link and the little flyer and stuff on it.
Okay, absolutely. Hey, Steve, I actually really appreciate you coming on because like I said, I've had a lot of people that have asked me about this, and this was just a topic that I just could not talk about because I didn't honestly, I did not know anything about it. You know, I have it in my family that people do it, but none of them do it for therapy reasons. So I really didn't know what the benefits were. You know.
And thanks for having me on because, I live for the opportunity to educate about the plant and especially help our veterans out, with more effective medical care.
Absolutely. Hey, anytime you have an event coming up or whatever, and you need some more publicity, you let me know, and I'll put it on the radio station. I'll throw it where that I have connections to.
Oh, awesome. That'd be wonderful. Thank you.
No problem. Hey, I appreciate it, Stacey. You
Yeah, is
take
there
care.
any
Be
other,
safe.
yeah, no more questions?
Oh, actually, one more thing. Tell everybody your organization and how they can reach out to you. I almost forgot. I apologize.
Oh, okay. So you can find me. It's going to go back to cannasensecampaign.org soon, but right now it's cannasensecampaign.com. And
Okay.
then also I'm a board member of freedomgrow.org, and you can go check out freedom.grow.org. you can follow the bus on their website too, and also learn all the good stuff that we do through Freedom Grow also.
Awesome. And I'll make sure that I include all the links and everything when I upload the audio part. And I'll go back and add them into the YouTube and all that stuff for you too.
All right, wonderful.
Awesome. Well, you take care, Stacey, and be safe.
Okay, well, thanks for having me on.
Bye-bye.
Bye.